A quiet diner, a creaking sign, a Marine and his German Shepherd stop for coffee. Nothing more. Across the room, a plus-sized woman, maybe 30, sits very still, eyes lowered, fingers tapping the table 3 times. Pause. 3 again. He was trained to hear artillery, but today he hears a whisper. The dog lifts his head first. Outside, a gray SUV idles, engine ticking like a clock running out. No one sees the signal. No one expects a rescue in a place like this. But the man notices. The dog will not look away. What happens next begins with almost nothing. Springfield, Missouri, wears the wind like an old coat along the Route 65 frontage road. Dust slips past cedar siding, faded to patient gray. Late light leans through the scuffed windows, amber and forgiving, mapping the floorboards between red-topped stools. A paper napkin twitches by the door. A sign chain ticks like a nervous metronome. Daniel Brooks enters with unhurried care, the measured calm of someone who still reads rooms before he claims a chair. Ranger, 5-year-old German Shepherd, shadows his knee with practiced grace. The bell pings once. The heater sighs. Ordinary settles like a blanket freshly shaken. Martha Green holds the counter, like a lighthouse holds a shoreline, steady, practical, unromantic about storms it's already met. She clocks Daniel's posture, the white crescent scar above his brow, the way he chooses a booth, giving eyes on door, window, both aisles, without announcing suspicion. Ranger sits on the aisle side, paws tugged, amber eyes thoughtful. Coffee? Martha asks. Strong, he answers. Honest at Island. A ham sandwich appears with the efficiency of someone who believes attention is a form of love. Daniel thanks her in a tone that treats gratitude as promise, not transaction. The room resumes its hush. Teenagers negotiate fries gone lukewarm. An older farmer stares into coffee like it's a small campfire he's keeping alive. Daniel eats without hurry, mapping exits, counting habits, letting calm be present but not trusted. The SUV outside keeps idling. A superhero sunshade turns its rear window into a cartoon smile he doesn't find funny. Ranger catalogs scents, lemon soap, old grease, wool, winter wind, and returns to the woman. Her tapping has stopped, her shoulders haven't relaxed. Martha's towel moves without wiping. The air feels like weather about to admit it's changing. She sits 2 booths left of the window. Thick dark hair pinned messily. A cardigan straining at one button. Floral dress and winter tights. Soft hands wrapped around the water glass that shivers. 30? Maybe 31? Pretty the way kindness is pretty when it's almost given up. Fear makes her precise. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. She tries again. The spoon falls. She leaves it there like a flare disguised as clumsiness. Across from her, a man in a gray suit looks wrong in wood paneling handsome the way glass is handsome. His smile is polished. His eyes aren't. The folder between them says, paperwork, without saying which kind. He nudges it closer with a flattened finger. She does not touch the pen. He speaks low. Daniel can't hear words. Only shape. Don't argue. Sign. Don't make me work for it. Ranger's growl begins as a floorboard tremor against Daniel's boot. Martha hears nothing, and somehow hears everything. Daniel rises like a man stretching, palms open, voice neighborly quiet. Afternoon. Short on sugar packets? He says a single mint on the table edge, geometry not generosity. If she can accept it, she's allowed to choose. The man's hand snaps, not brutal, just practiced. Catching her wrist before movement is a movement. The mint clicks, spins, stops by the folder. She's allergic, he says too quickly for truth. Ranger takes 1 step, a muscle's worth hackles, lifting like quiet surf. The woman flinches from the word, not the dog. Martha's towel twists into a rope. Daniel shrugs like a man indifferent to men and retreats to his booth. Calm returns, but thinner. He taps his table 3 times. Martha's eyes widen a notch. He nods toward the woman, then the idling gray. A plan forms softly. Sheriff's office, Monroe. The phone answers on Martha's hip. Possible coercion, she whispers, back turned, voice steadying itself. Gray SUV running, quiet approach. Rachel Monroe's yes is the kind that bends time. Keep them there. How? Spill sugar, pour coffee. Make waiting cheaper than leaving. Martha moves like a metronome with purpose, steam ribboning over a careful suit sleeve. Daniel's breath lengthens. Ranger's ears angle door-window door. The man checks his phone. Patience peels. The woman's knee bounces. Her palm flattens it. Outside, wind rattles tin. Inside, minutes thicken like syrup, refuse to boil. Teen elbows sugar loose. Packets scatter like white birds. Sorry, he blurts, too loud with innocence. Martha kneels into the aisle, a human traffic cone with a purpose. The man doesn't stand. Standing declares intention. The spoon still glints on linoleum like a small moon. Ranger watches the man's shoes shiny. City wrong for gravel. Daniel watches the woman's hands clenched, then open, then clenched. He rehearses angles, weights, distances. The etiquette of intervention. Be a door, not just a wall. Move air, not just bodies. Make aftermaths survivable. Calm is still the skin, weather underneath swells. She meets Daniel's reflection glass, not his eyes safer that way, then nods to nobody. He stands, not fast. You drop this, he says, offering nothing except presence. We're waiting on a notary. The man answers, boredom like a blade. Ranger lowers his head until his gaze draws a line at shin height, a boundary written in muscle. We'll be going, the man decides, snaring her wrists like carrying a briefcase. Papers slide. Signatures wait to be stolen. The room forgets how to chew. Martha freezes Meatneil holding two sugars like white flags that refuse surrender. Daniel steps into the aisle that leads to the door and becomes square footage. Not yet, he says, quiet like a gate with a good latch. The wind slaps the sign, glass buzzes. The farmer studies his reflection, because mirrors are kinder than scenes. The teenagers stop being funny. Ranger adds 1 inch forward. The inch history writes down later as decisive. Move, the man says. Daniel glances at his watch ball corporate issue, consultant chic. Nice procurement, he murmurs, buying seconds with ego. I consult, the man replies. Already flattered, already counting losses that aren't arriving. Sirens begin a thread far thin, undeniable. The woman's breath stutters into courage. She leans back, not free, just altering physics. Ranger barks once. A door kicked by thunder. The SUV's idle hiccups, as if engines feel panic. Daniel sets a hand, not shove, not plea, on the man's shoulder. A gravity suggestion. Let her hand go. The sirens bray thicker. Red and blue practice on window glass. Martha rises slowly. Palms open like weather calming horses. The room becomes a lesson in pressure. The man wants to run. Every tenant confesses it. The door is 4 steps and closing. Rachel Monroe arrives like an answer that's heard this question before. Boots, jacket, quiet authority, hands, Alvarez shadows, radio murmuring. Fingers lift from the woman's skin, her knees loosen into Rachel's steadiness. You're all right, the sheriff tells her, voice placing a chair under a collapsing body. You've overreacted, the man argues, assembling his smile, polishing it with disdain. Maybe, Rachel says. Let's keep overreacting until everyone breathes. The SUV grows still. Silence enters like a guest finally invited. Daniel steps back, widening space around the woman. Ranger resettles, protection shifting into orbit rather than collision. At the counter, water becomes Rachel. Name? Rachel asks. Hannah, she manages small, frayed syllable. Martha repeats it, stitches it. Hannah touches Ranger's head like checking if warmth still exists. It does. Good boy, she whispers, and the dog accepts the rank. Questions come with soft teeth. Met him how, drove together, who's waiting outside, Answers arrive as mosaic pieces. Consulting, paperwork, credit, dinner. He said I owed him, Hannah whispers. Apology aimed at no one. Alvarez glances at the window. We'll talk to him, he says. Promise and plan braided. Step outside, Rachel tells the man. Authority makes choices simpler. He calculates, decides to obey theatrically. The bell behaves like a bell. Wind scrubs inside air. The gray engine dies. Quiet lands heavy and kind. Hannah drinks because someone asked her to. The napkin becomes a witness, wrong and forgiven. You saw, she tells Daniel. You asked? He answers. Handing agency back like something precious he found on the floor, Ranger leans his weight against her shin to keep her from drifting. She smiles, surprised to find her mouth remembering how. Alvarez returns with inventory that makes temperature drop. Templates, shelving, blankets, zip ties, prepaid phones, a warm laptop. Outrage flickers and is banked for usefulness. Okay, Rachel says to the room, to herself, to the line between prevention and rescue. Paper will work tonight, not against her. Outside, lights quiet down to engines and radios. Inside, Martha pours Daniel another coffee because continuity is medicine. It tastes different because context salts everything. You'll need statements, he tells Rachel. You'll have them, she answers. Hannah nods, surprised at her own voice returning. I can tell it, she says. What he said, where I almost said yes to disappearing. She looks at her hands and laughs, once astonished, unsteady. I thought being big meant being hard to move. I was wrong. You were moved, Daniel says gently. Not the same thing. Ranger chuffs like a friend, clearing his throat before advising against despair. Teenagers remember their phones. The farmer leaves too much cash. Outside, evening irons, the sky flat and merciful. Somewhere, a crow decides this wind is worth keeping. Rachel's plan speaks in verbs. We'll book him, image the laptop, state on plates, find the last target and the next almost. To Hannah, escort home tonight, or shelter if home is a map he knows. Tomorrow my office, we'll make paper stand in front of you. Hannah nods into strength she didn't expect. Ranger's tail thumps once, a drum hit landing exactly where the bar needs it. The room relaxes by degrees. Gravity remembers its job. Breath becomes a habit again. Ordinary tiptoes back in, careful not to spook the miracle. By the door, Hannah hesitates. Can you? She stops, embarrassed by a need that life has taught her to hide. Daniel solves the sentence. Yes, she laughs, relieved the word still fit. Just walk me to the car. Of course. They move as a small constellation. Marine, woman, dog. The sign clacks approval. Gravel crunches like a handshake with earth. Everest watches the gray SUV hauled onto a truck. Rachel signs lines that make future room for sleep. Hannah touches Ranger's head. Thank you, sir, she tells him. And Ranger, who outranks nearly everyone, accepts solemnly. The door breathes warm air when they return. Martha sets out pie like a sacrament nobody has to deserve. On the house, she says, voice lighter, eyes shiny. The farmer's money still waits under his cup. Teenagers whisper hero stories without the word hero. Hannah sits straighter. Her cardigan button holds. Her hands are steadier around the fork. Daniel eats like a man who knows fuel matters after adrenaline. Ranger rests, chin on paws, still listening, always listening. Outside, the sky trades amber for denim. The chain taps, softer now, like punctuation satisfied with its sentence. Rachel lingers by the counter with forms that belong to Aftermath. You could help more, she tells Daniel without salesmanship. We're building a senior and vulnerable watch, quiet presence, calls before crises. He looks at Ranger, who tilts his head as if to say, work is a walk if you call it right. All right, he says, if it keeps people from vanishing in plain sight. Martha pretends not to eavesdrop badly. Relief looks good on her. She hangs it beside the coffee mugs like a tool she plans to use again. Hannah asks for a pen, not to sign what hurt, but to write what helps. She scribbles a number on the napkin and slides it to Martha. If someone comes in tapping 3 times, she says, Call me too. I'll sit with her until help arrives. The napkin becomes a compact more binding than some contracts. Martha tucks it near the register like a lucky coin. Ranger watches the exchange and breathes out long and content, as if acknowledging the pack just expended by one brave person. Night arrives without apology, and the diner lets in. The heater hums, the fly gives up its sermon, dishes stack, clink, wait for morning. Hannah lingers at the door, looks back at her table, a rectangle of laminate that became a lifeboat. She mouths thank you to no one and everyone. Daniel nods. Martha waves the towel like a flag of truce with the universe. Ranger blinks slow, satisfied with the day's arithmetic. Threats measured, courage answered, home increased by 1 parked car, and a woman who will sleep. On the wall near the pie case, Martha pins a small index card with a piece of blue tape. If you need help, tap 3 times. It's not policy, just folklore that works. Under it, she adds another line in handwriting that leans left. Someone here is listening. The sign is small. The promise is not. People will read it tomorrow and think it's cute, or unnecessary, or perfect. Tonight, it is earned. Tonight, it belongs to a plus-size woman who forgot she could ask and remembered in time. When the bell pings again, it's only the wind getting sentimental. Martha laughs at herself and flips the sign to closed. Daniel zips his jacket. Hannah hugs herself once, testing the new edges of safety, and passes. You'll be all right, Rachel says. And for once, the phrase isn't cheap. Alvarez salutes Ranger with 2 fingers, which the dog accepts with a gravely tolerant blink. Outside, Springfield lets the road hum again. Inside, chairs go upside down on tables, legs to sky like tired colts. In the mirror of the front window, Daniel becomes silhouette and then nothing. Ranger's reflection lingers a blink longer. A dark arrow pointed at the door, then fades. Martha locks up, pockets the key, stands a second in the quiet. Ordinary returns, richer for what it had to hold. Tomorrow will bring eggs, coffee, gossip, bills, somebody's birthday, somebody's bad day. Also, if needed, courage. Small, repeatable, enough. The sign chain ticks. The room exhales. And a story that started with almost nothing decides to keep going. Rachel didn't release Hannah that night with a goodbye. She released her with instructions written in neat block letters and a patrol car idling behind like a promise. Daniel walked her to her apartment 2 rooms over a tire shop, the stairwell smelling of rubber and rain. Ranger took the steps like he'd memorized them years ago. Inside, Hannah paused. Her place was clean but spare. Thrift couch, secondhand table, a cork board with job applications pinned like butterflies. She touched a magnet on the fridge, a grocery list scrawled in blue, and exhaled a laugh that sounded like a sob. I didn't think I'd see this again. Daniel did what competent men do when words feel too big. He checked the logs, tested the windows, stood with shoulders square and quiet. We'll post a drive-by, he said. Rachel's team will rotate. Hannah nodded, hugging herself, unsure where to put her hands on the body people had taught her to apologize for. He said I was easy to move, she whispered. Not because of size, because I wanted someone to decide for me. Ranger stepped into her space and leaned solid, deliberate pressure. She steadied. You decided, Daniel said. 3 taps is a decision. Most never make it. Sleep arrived in fragments. She dreamed of the gray SUV idling beneath her window, of a pen dragged across a line that would erase her name. At 3, she woke and found Ranger on the rug, eyes gold in the streetlight, head lifting at her breath. Okay, she said, absurdly grateful for a dog who understood watch. Morning took the shape of oatmeal, 2 mugs, and a silence that was not empty. When he left, he did it like a closing bracket firm, protective, complete. She surprised herself by locking the door and smiling at the click like it belonged to her. At the sheriff's office, paper turned brave. Rachel moved through forms like a mother, easing a child into cold water. Steady, unhurried, honest. Read this out loud to me, she said, tapping lines. Hannah read. Hearing her own voice narrate what had almost happened hurt worse than the happening. But each word written and witnessed felt like stitching. The fabric of her life stopped tearing. Alvarez returned with updates. Cole talked, then didn't. The laptop sang. Previous victims were being contacted. He'll make bail, Rachel warned. But his leash is short. We'll keep glass between you. Hannah nodded, grateful for plain talk. The diner became triage and chapel. Martha brewed coffee so dark it could hold you up. Regulars practiced a new ritual. Eyes on the door, ears on the room, kindness ready to spend. Teenagers refilled sugar on purpose, like they'd been given rank. Martha hung a second card under the first. TAP 3, breathe, sit. She added a third line in bold pen, food first, then talk. Toward noon, Hannah came in with shoulders squared but flexible. Martha pointed a coffee at her heart, set a plate of eggs, as if remedies were better fried. You coming back to work? I'm asking. They rebuilt Hannah's days with small bricks, mornings at the diner, afternoons at Rachel's, for statements and practical safety, routes, numbers, anchors. Martha paid her for the hours even when Hannah only wiped manuals nobody had touched. You're on the clock for existing, Martha said. And that sentence alone rearranged parts of Hannah's spine. She began keeping a little notebook. Names of kind people, phrases that helped, the way Ranger's tail thumped once when danger passed. She listed 3 taps in the front cover and drew a square around it, like a key that fits every lock in emergency. Cole posted bail under the kind of watch that makes bail feel like a small room. He returned to the world thinner in the face, yet intact enough to frighten. Rachel called it out without embroidery. He'll test edges. Daniel didn't wait to be assigned. He began showing up where shadows pulled parking lots, grocery aisles, the bus stop at dusk never looming, always near. Hannah hated needing a shadow, but she loved learning what safety feels like when it walks beside you and doesn't claim you. When Ranger leaned against her knee at crosswalks, cars stopped as if he'd negotiated with gravity. On the 4th morning, a woman in a lavender cardigan entered the diner and hovered by the pie case like a ghost too polite to haunt. Hannah recognized the expression, the one that says, I'm fine, while the hands say, I'm sinking. She dried her palms on her apron and went over. Coffee? The woman nodded, eyes wet. Her fingers tapped once, twice, stalled. Hannah set the cup down and tapped 3 times on the saucer herself. Soft, declarative, kind. The woman inhaled like oxygen had just been invented. Bathroom, she whispered. He's waiting outside. Martha's head lifted. Daniel was already standing. It wasn't Cole. Men like him never worked alone. This one wore the same suit language. Competence, harmlessness, hurry. He held a to-go cup he hadn't ordered. Martha called the sheriff with a voice that could thread needles. Rachel's cruiser slid in quiet as a thought. They handled it like choreography. Hannah escorted the woman to the office, Rachel to the parking lot, Daniel between any lines. No drama, no heroics, just practiced dignity. After the woman Callista ate pie with her coat still on and said, I didn't know help had a sound, Hannah smiled. It has several. This one is ours. News traveled the way good rumors do, fast, stubborn, generous. A holding group of gray suits began losing their grip. Victims who'd once whispered called Rachel to speak plainly. A church basement filled with chairs and shy resolve. Hannah stood at the back with a paper plate of cookies and didn't plan to talk. But when someone asked how, you're allowed to ask for help, she heard her voice answer. Decide first, then let your hands do the talking. No one laughed, Pence wrote. Afterward, an older man pressed a 10 into her hand. For the sign, he said. That night the wind climbed down from the hills and reminded Springfield it could still be mean. Power flickered, then failed. The diner's emergency lanterns punched holes in the dark. Customers turned into neighbors by consensus. Martha found the battery radio. Alvarez hauled in a box of candles from his trunk with a grin that looked like he'd been waiting years to be this useful. Hannah brewed coffee on the gas line like a witch who'd gone to trade school. In the dim, everyone talked more softly. Daniel listened the way good fathers do, with his eyes and his patience. Stories spilled, widowhood and layoffs, spine surgeries and sons in trouble. The rent and the rasp in the chest that meant winter was long. Hannah found herself speaking between refills small pieces of the life she shrunk to fit other people's expectations. "I'm not delicate," she said once, almost angrily. "I'm careful. Big difference." The farmer from the seat cab nodded like he'd been waiting to hear that for 40 years. Ranger drifted table to table, accepting palmfuls of thanks in the universal currency of scratches. In the candlelight, even grief looked less like a predator and more like weather. Cole tried an end run 3 days later. A text from a number Hannah didn't recognize. "Let's clear the air." He offered apologies, promised explanations, flattered her intelligence, mocked her courage in the same sentence. She read it twice, then forwarded it to Rachel without commentary. "Beautiful," Rachel texted back. "Keep doing that." But fear entered like smoke under her door. That afternoon, Daniel walked her home the long way to make sure fear had to keep up. When they reached the stairwell, she said, "Do you think I'm brave or just lucky?" He said, "Brave makes luck stick." The preliminary hearing felt like theater performed in stone. Hannah wore her one good dress, not to impress, but to remind herself she was not small. Cole sat at council table with a new suit and the old expression pleasant like poison. When Hannah testified, she made her voice low and slow. The way she talks to kitchens that misbehave, she said "I" more than "he," describing choices, not damage. When the defense asked if she was sure about the taps, her mouth curved. "Yes," she said, "and even if I wasn't, my hands remembered." In the gallery, Ranger sighed approval. Back at the diner, a framed print appeared near the cash register. Callista's thank you note written in looping navy ink around 3 small dots. Martha stuck a sprig of dried lavender in the corner and declared the area protected by stubbornness. A retired music teacher brought a bell and tuned it to a gentle note. If anyone rang it 3 times, even by accident, the whole room would look up in the same heartbeat. "Is this overkill?" a trucker asked. "Hope so," Martha said. "I like overkilling bad ideas." The trucker paid for 6 pies and left grinning into the wind. Saturdays grew fat with breakfast, and Hannah learned the rhythms of belonging. Who needed extra napkins? Who needed no questions? Who needed to be told they were seen without being asked to perform gratitude? She memorized names the way she once memorized routes to nowhere. When a child pointed at her and said, "She's strong," the mother shushed her. Hannah shook her head. "Let her say it," she said gently. "It's true." Later, behind the counter, she cried into a dish towel for exactly 9 seconds, and then finished the shift with her chin set and her shoulders proud. Daniel's offer came on a Tuesday that smelled like wet newspaper. "Rachel's building the watch," he said. "I'm covering evenings. We need someone who can read a room faster than a badge." Hannah stared. "You're asking me to join?" He nodded. "Not as a decoy, as a reader." She laughed, startled, then sobered. "People will say I'm not the type." "Correct," he said. "You're better." Ranger thumped his tail once. Democracy in motion. That night, she sat at her tiny table and drafted a schedule. Diner, watch, sleep, live. She added a line she never thought she'd earn. Future. Spring bled into something kinder. The gray SUV went to auction with a new engine and a ruined story. Cole's associates began to plea. The laptop kept singing. Hannah bought a sturdier cardigan because she finally expected to be outside again. On a slow afternoon, a girl in college hoodie interviewed her for a community courage blog and asked what she would tell the version of herself who sat shaking by a window, asking the glass for permission. Hannah said, "Move while you're still scared. Confidence is a train you catch on the way, not a ticket you need to board." The case closed in summer heat that made the highway shimmer like possibility. Sentences were read in a courtroom that smelled faintly of floor wax and reckoning. When it was done, Rachel shook Hannah's hand like colleagues do. Alvarez brought cupcakes decorated with 3 small dots in blue frosting. They looked like Morse code for persistence. Daniel stood a little apart, as if giving the moment its own breath. Hannah crossed the room and hugged him anyway. A careful, grateful hug that didn't borrow promises. Ranger leaned against both of them until their balance became one shared thing. On the anniversary, the diner held a potluck stubborn enough to count as a holiday. Martha read a list of names people who had tapped and been heard. Callista brought lavender. The retired teacher rang the bell 3 times and everyone laughed, because now it was just a bell. Hannah stood by the window where she had first watched her life decide to keep going. Her body was the same,